Hey everyone, Reaper here again with a video that I couldn't wait to do. This video has been a long time coming. I remember I mentioned, I believe it was earlier in the year, or maybe it was even last year, what I consider a run. You know, everyone has different ideas of what a comic book run is. There are more traditionalists that consider a run everything in the volume, if it has multiple volumes. Spider-Man, the Volume 1 run is Spider-Man 1 through whenever it ended. I tend to look at runs as sections. You know, the Frank Miller run on Daredevil, or the Frank Miller run here or there, the Chris Claremont run on X-Men. That's, you know, it's pretty much how I divide certain runs and all that stuff. Sometimes by artist, sometimes by author, or just sometimes just by number or by age. You know, Silver Age, Bronze Age, whatever. Well, here, although I am still working on my Silver Age X-Men run, my original run that I wanted to complete, a certain type of goal that I set out for myself, and I still have several of these goals with other titles like Fantastic Four, probably Daredevil, definitely Amazing Spider-Man, was to have numbers 1 through 20. And I completed that, at least that goal, that particular run with X-Men in 2020. So here, I want to show you my X-Men 1 through 20 run. And it's been a long time coming. Here we have X-Men number 20, a very nice copy. I give this a 7.5. I purchased this back when I first started coming back to the hobby. Now, when I first started coming back in the hobby, late 2013 into 2014, I wasn't making videos. I was collecting books and all of that. And I didn't start making videos really until June of 2014. Those videos are no longer available to watch. I made videos in June and July. I didn't start making comic book hauls until August of 2014, and that's when I started I kept those videos out, even though they're terrible. But all the videos from July and June of that year, I just made them I made them private on my YouTube. But that was one of the point is that was one of the books, and there's a couple more in this run that I got during that time period when I came back to the hobby and I said, I'm going to revisit X-Men. And I started picking off some of those Silver Age X-Men books that I didn't get when I left the hobby many years earlier. Here we have X-Men number 19. This is probably a 6.0, 6.5 copy. I purchased this from Mike. This is actually an upgrade. Originally, I had a lower grade copy that I sold that I got from my local comic book shop, and then a couple of years ago, Mike had a copy available, and I said, well, I'll just sell the other one and put that towards this one, and rest is history. Here we have X-Men number 18. This was one of the last books I needed to complete this X-Men 1 through 21. I'll tell you what the last book was when we get to it, but this wasn't it. But this was the second to the last book that I needed to complete my X-Men 1 through 20 run. But you know, it was a book that I was like, yeah, I'll get to it. That's why I saved it for one of the last, right? But when I bought it, I realized how nice it is, how great it is. I really like this cover. This is probably a 5.5 copy. Like I said in another previous video, when it comes to certain books, in particular X-Men, I don't really want anything below a 4.0, and that's not because I'm a grading snob. It's certainly not that. It's because I know that with a lot of these X-Men books, except for a couple of them, or except for maybe just one of them, I'm able to do that. You know, I'm able to get something at least 4.0, which is the bare minimum, or something higher than that. And I'll talk more about that when we get to certain books. So that was number 18. Here we have one of my favorite covers. I've always known about that. I bought this again 2 years ago. This is probably a 7.0 copy of X-Men number 17. You know, what's so special about this cover? It sticks out because of the red. That's why. Is there anything on this cover that is so remarkably drawn? No, not particularly. But sometimes it's not just the way the cover is drawn, although that's a large part of it. It's just sometimes the colors that are used to make a cover pop and make it seem like it's more than it actually is. And I think that's an excellent example with X-Men number 17. You know, I've known about a lot of the early X-Men. When I say, I've always known about these covers, it's because I was familiar with what they look like. There were a lot of X-Men books and other Silver Age books that I like in series that I like, that I never knew what the covers looked like in Amazing Spider-Man and in X-Men. So when I say I've always known about the cover, I've always known what it looked like for many, many years. But I never really paid it any mind. But then when I got it, and I said, well, this is one, it was a good price I got. I bought it off of Instagram a couple years ago. And I said, yeah, it's a good price, I'll get it. And then when I got it, I'm like, wow, I never realized that how colors can make, or at least maybe I did, and I just didn't pay too much attention to it, how colors sometimes could just make a cover seem more than what it is. And that's a great example. I bought this from Superworld a few years back. X-Men number 16. This is the first... No, this is not the first appearance. I was about to say this first appearance of Master Mold. No, that's the next issue. This is probably a 6.0 copy. Okay. Nice book. Yellow is another one of my favorite colors in the background. Here's number 15. This is probably a 4.5. It could, like I said, bare minimum for me is 4.0. But this is definitely a book I can see myself getting a 6.0 in down the line. So even though 4.0 is the cutoff point, there are some that I may still try to get something a little bit better. And this is it. But for right now, it's pretty good. Or at least very good plus. X-Men number 15, this is the first appearance of the Master Mold. 14, the next one I'm going to show, 15 and 16 are the original Sentinels trilogy, and they came back with Neil Adams drawing them with X-Men number 57. Right? Is it 57? Yeah, 57. They came back 57, then they were 58, and I think it concluded in 59. Okay? That was another great storyline. You know, that was the second time you saw the Sentinels come back with Larry Trask leading it instead of Bolivar Trask. And here we have X-Men number 14, first appearance of Bolivar Trask and the Sentinels. They looked a little different, didn't they? It wasn't until X-Men 57 where Neil Adams tweaked the Sentinels slightly. I mean, they still had the same faces, more or less, the same helmet design, all that stuff. But, you see almost like bare legs and bare arms. They almost look like people in armor, which I didn't like about them, which I didn't like about the Kirby drawings of them. But it wasn't until when Neil Adams came back, he drew the Sentinels in a version that I think a lot of us are familiar with, from 57, 58, 59, which carried over into 98, 99, and all the other issues that came afterwards. So here again, this was actually an upgrade for me. I don't have my original copy with me. I still have it. It's one of the worst. It's like one of the lowest grades I've ever had in an X-Men book. It's stored away in the closet. Very low grade, but that was an upgrade for me. That was one of the books I bought right before I started releasing videos on YouTube. Now, when I say releasing videos on YouTube, that means August 2014. Stuff that's still released. The stuff that I had out in June, July, like I said at the beginning of the video, is all private. Private now. Now we have... here we go on. 13. Another great book. The X-Men number 14 is probably a 7.0. This is probably a 5.5 or a 6. This is another one I bought from Superworld, Ted. I like going to Superworld. I like Ted. And I like getting books from him. I think that, some of the prices are pretty good. But you still got to be careful, though, with grading and all that stuff. So sometimes when you think you're getting a great price, it's for a grade that's listed. It may not necessarily be the grade that's listed. And so it's maybe not such a great price. But more times than not, I really enjoy going to Superworld. And there's a couple of books that I got from Superworld in this run here. Here's one that I got right around the time I left the hobby. This was back in 96. I fully left in 97. But this is what I got. This was almost a high school graduation present for me back then. We have, and this is the one I bought from Canada. We have a 5.0, maybe a 5.5 copy of X-Men number 12, the first appearance of the Juggernaut. As you saw with 13, this was the continuation of the Juggernaut. And I've said in a previous video, sometimes the Juggernaut appearances, except for this one and that one I just showed you, are a little underrated when he comes back in issue 32 and 33. Was it 32 he came back? I think it was. And then he popped up again in 46, I believe. Was it 46 or 48? I should know this. But anyway, those later appearances in the Silver Age sometimes are a little underrated. But here's where it all started. Again, the red really makes a great cover. But I think the artwork here is really nice. This was, I believe, the first issue without Jack Kirby. Okay, I've often said that Jack Kirby, it didn't seem like he was really into the X-Men the way he was in Fantastic Four, maybe the way he was in the Avengers and all that stuff. I think Kirby really liked space, and he really liked soldier type stuff, and that's why I think he did really, really well with Captain America, and that's why I think he did really, really well with Fantastic Four. When it came to X-Men, I think it was just another job for him to do, in my opinion. Now here I have 2 copies of this with number 11. My original copy, which is probably a 3.5, not a bad copy. This is one of the books I bought back in 1993. I think toward the end of 1993, local con in my town, or town over or whatever. I don't remember. That I don't remember. Sometimes time, I'm pretty good with some things, but with memory, but I've been losing a lot as of late as I've been getting older. But here's my original copy, 3.0, not bad. Solid 3.0, 3.5 copy. Not bad. Here was the upgrade. This is probably like a 5.5, maybe a 6 of X-Men number 11. Again, remember I said I bought this from Ted. So like I said, there were a couple books I bought from Ted in this video, this being another one of them. All right. So now, let me grab this next pile here, put it on my lap. Okay. Now we are in the top 10. This one I bought at the New York Comic Con. When was this? In 2018. I bought this from Bob Storms. Mr. Happy himself. X-Men number 10. Another 6.0, 6.5 copy. Really, really nice. And he gave me some, I don't want to say he gave me a great deal on it, but, he had it listed. It was in one of the long boxes there, and he just took a percentage off for me. I didn't even ask for anything. And he was like, oh, thanks, Bob. Nice cover. Very nice. Great book. Reintroducing Kazar or Kazar, whatever way you pronounce him, like a Marvel's version of like a Tarzan type character. Here's another upgrade that I bought from Ted at Superworld. X-Men number 9. My original copy of this, the original copy of number 9 I bought when I came back to the hobby. Like I was saying with that number 20, right? And I was just coming back to the hobby. I wasn't paying attention. When I finally opened the book again, when I finally opened the book, I had it, and I had it for a little while. Then I opened it, and I realized the front wrap was ripped out. It was put back in, but it was ripped out. And I'm like, what happened? Well, as it turned out that somebody didn't necessarily rip out the front wrap. They ripped out the pinup that was attached on the last page. I think it was of Jean Grey. So when they tore that out, the front wrap came loose off the staples, and it was just sort of put back in. Regardless, it was an incomplete book that I wound up selling really cheap, much less than what I paid for it, unfortunately. And I wound up putting that money and a little bit more to getting this one. It's a 5.0 copy, solid 5.0. From the same place I got that X-Men number, the original X-Men number 9 and number 20, comes X-Men number 8. I believe I bought this in May or the end of April 2014. Up in North Jersey. So back then when I bought it, it was nice to have add another single digit X-Men book to my collection with the first appearance of Eunice the Untouchable. This is probably a 5.5 copy. All right, here we have another purchase from Mike. Remember, I purchased number 19 from him. Well, here we have number 7. I included that photo of me and him in the parking lot where we did the deed. Here's X-Men number 7. This was the very last X-Men book I needed for my 1 through 20 run. 18 was the second last. I purchased that. That was relatively cheap, and that came with number 21 in my purchase. That was I had 2.55 copies of numbers 18 and 21, and they were both really cheap. So I was like, hey, great, a little bonus. A little outside the run, but pretty cool. But here's number 7. This is the second appearance of the Blob. This is a nice copy, 6.0 copy. And this is also the first appearance of, is it Cerebro? I think I didn't mark it. But yeah, his first appearance of Cerebro. Again, very nice copy. The very last book I needed to complete my X-Men run, 1 through 20. Here's one that I got from my local comic book shop. X-Men number 6. I think this is a 4.5 copy. He thinks it's a 5.0. I disagree. I think it's a 4.5, maybe even a 4.0, but no lower than that. Regardless, this is a really cool book to have. This is when the Submariner shows up for the first time in an X-Men title. Okay. This was another one that took me a while to get. This one, I think, out of the, I needed 6, 7, obviously 18, and I think there was another one. I think I needed 4 for the longest time in order to complete my X-Men 1 through 20 run. And this was always the most expensive because it was the lowest number of the ones I needed. And I think largely because the Submariner makes an early appearance, so that's why the book was a little bit more money, beside the fact that it was the lower number being 6 and all that. Okay, here we have, you saw, I talked about this in one of my recent hauls, X-Men number 5. This is a 4.0 copy, solid 4.0. I told you the story that this was originally sent to me in one of the middle, not the old label CGC, but the one that came before the one we have now. And the guy sent it media mail, no board, just this bubble wrap, and the CGC slab came smashed. Fortunately, there was no damage done to the book. I mean, I didn't care breaking it out of the slab. It's not like I wanted to display my 4.0 X-Men number 5. I was actually glad that I was able to open it up. But I had a 2.5 copy that I upgraded to get this one. So it met the criteria of being a 4.0. And I believe this is the second appearance of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. And I think it's the first appearance of Asteroid M. Another one of the books that I got when I first came back to the hobby, a book that I've wanted ever since I was a little kid, that I was finally able to make reality in 2014, the summer of 2014, with X-Men number 4, a solid 4.0, perhaps a 4.5 copy of X-Men number 4. The second appearance of Magneto and the first appearance of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. More importantly, out of that group, the first appearance of the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. As you know, Scarlet Witch, she's made her debut in the MCU. She has her show coming out, WandaVision, with Vision, right? WandaVision. So pretty cool. This is definitely a great book to have if you're an X-Men fan. And it's one of the books that's definitely sought out. Okay, X-Men number 4 is definitely a classic to have when it comes to collecting early X-Men. And one of the more expensive ones to get. Okay. Okay, here we have my original copy of X-Men number 3. One of the earliest single-digit X-Men books I've had since 1993. Okay, here it is. The one that I bought from 1 Million Comics, wherever they are today. I have no idea. Whatever they're calling themselves today, I could not care less. But here it is. Now, one of the things I talked about with this book was, it was a 4.0. It was a solid 4.0. It's got a little piece out over there, but it's a 4.0. When I got it, it had like a little bit, back in 93, it had a little bit of a tape pull over here where you could see there's a blemish in the black shadow. So what did I do? What did I do when I was considered Little Reaper? Well, I took a marker and I colored it in. So I restored it. Mike, as I've mentioned him a couple of times, he was kind enough to do a little professional unrestoration, if you will. I don't even know if that's a word. Where he took out the marker. Yeah, it was easy because I told him where it was restored. That's where I did it. And it didn't have any other restoration on it. So he did what he could. So as a result, the 4.0 qualified, because I made it qualified, I think is now a maybe a 3.5, maybe a 3.0. I don't care. This was, I bought this back in 93, and it's something that I'm going to keep with me. I'm not going to sell. However, I did upgrade it. And I showed this in a previous video earlier in 2020. I upgraded it to a 5.0 right here. Right? Really cool. Not bad at all. Not bad at all. I was happy to. I thought when it came to upgrading that book, because I knew the damage I did to that for the longest time, that it's a big no-no. So when I always plan to upgrade it to a book that's not restored, I just thought I'd get a 4.0, what I had. And I was able to get that 5.0, which was very cheap. It was, I went on, I bought it from Metropolis. And they had a bunch of X-Men 3s. Not a hard book to find. Bunch of X-Men 3s, both raw and slabbed. And, they were all around the same price range. When you get to 5s and the 4s and the 6s, they were all relatively around the same price range. Some a little less, some a little more. And I'm looking at the 5s, and it seems okay. There's a pattern for the 5s. Then I came across that 5, and I'm like, the price was a couple $100 less. And I'm saying to myself, there's got to be something wrong with this book. Maybe it's a purple label, and I'm not seeing it. I'm looking at it again. Because, sometimes when you see something that's a really good price, you're like, that takes over, and you start ignoring the details and all that stuff, or you don't see what the fine print is. So I made sure, let me use the magnifying glass. Is this a purple label? No. Is there a stain on it? No. Are the staples rusted? No. Is there any weird notes on it that said, tape or whatever? No. That was it. And it turned out to be pretty good. So, worked out. Last two. Again, this was another one of the books that I've wanted for such a long time. And I believe this showed up in one of my, Comic Book Haul number 1. Here we have a 6.5 copy of X-Men number 2. How do we know it's a 6.5? It says right here. And it's a very good looking book. As I look at it, I do not understand why this is not higher. This is a 6.5, and I keep mentioning this. My Werewolf by Night number 32 is a 7.0 and has deeper creases in the spine than this book does. As you can see, you probably really can't see, it's getting a little bit of glare. But front and back, it's a very clean looking book. Very clean looking book. So I don't know why I got a 6.5. But I'm not the grader, so who cares? Who cares what I think? Or, it doesn't really matter. It is what it is. Regardless, very, very happy. I was very happy to get X-Men number 2 when I first got it. This is a book that I wanted since 1993. So when I came back to the hobby, after a while, when I was able finally to get it, a 6.5, no less, very thrilled. And, of course, the last one for this. X-Men number 1, a 3.0 copy. It's got some issues because it's a 3.0. If it didn't have the issues, it wouldn't be a 3.0. Regardless, very clean looking book. This is actually my third copy of X-Men number 1. The first one I got back in 93 for $25. No cover. The back wrap was ripped out. Brown pages, tape on every page, tears all over the place. $25. Or $35. I think it was $35. Whatever. I sold it for like $500 a couple years ago. So then I got X-Men number 1 when I came back to the hobby. This was probably a month before I started showing the comic book haul video, so it never made it into a comic book haul. But there was a video on it when I first got it. But again, like I said at the beginning of the video, it's set to private. It's not released. But then I sold it to put toward my Amazing Fantasy 15, but I managed to get this one immediately after. Same grade. However, this book is nicer looking, I feel. It's a nicer looking 3.0 because the white is very nice, the red is really deep. The other one had a faded cover. The white was kind of brownish. The red was, you could tell it was in the sunlight for a little too long, so some of the color was sucked out. So it wasn't as nice looking as this. So it's not necessarily, it's a replacement and sort of upgrade. Now, I often said that I'd like to upgrade this again to maybe a 4.0. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But I recently looked at what 4.0s are going for. And what one sold for on GPA, I'm like, whoa, I don't think I'll be doing a 4.0 anytime soon. And the 3.0s are crazy prices as well. X-Men, the point is, X-Men's really hot because of their impending MCU entry, how they're going to be brought in. X-Men's they're a very popular team, very popular title. So I think a lot of people are interested in seeing what X-Men are going to be in the movies, how they're going to be introduced, how they're going to integrate with all the other established MCU characters like the Avengers and Spider-Man and all those other characters. So it's definitely going to be an exciting time. So a lot of people have been paying a lot of attention to this book. And I'll be honest with you, X-Men #1, I feel, for a very long time was one of those underrated early Marvel Silver Age books. Yeah, it was expensive, and yeah, it was kind of popular, but when you put it up next to Amazing Spider-Man #1 or Amazing Fantasy 15 or Incredible Hulk #1, it was always so much less. And Avengers beneath that, as well as Daredevil #1 and so forth. So I think X-Men #1 was kind of neglected for a long period of time. And then it wasn't until about 2 years ago when there were rumblings that Fox was going to sell to the MCU, and they did. And with all the announcements and all the theories about X-Men eventually showing up, the book has been heating up and is very, very hot right now. And I think it's gonna stay hot for a while. And even when it cools off a bit, it's still going to be very, very expensive. So yeah, it's definitely a great book to have, but it was one of the first that I wanted when I came back into the hobby, because I was always an X-Men fan, big X-Men fan. I wanted to stay with X-Men for a while, just collect X-Men. I mean, we know how that went. But X-Men #1, X-Men #4, and a couple others when it comes to upgrades like 14 and so forth were on my list when I first came back. So point is that, you know, having this run complete, this 1 through 20 run of X-Men, was a personal goal of mine for many, many years. And the fact that I was able to keep them at a certain grade, a certain presentable grade, was an accomplishment for me, the way I see it. And, you know, for what this thing is going for right now, the 3.0 is not so bad. Well, I hope you enjoyed this. I plan to, you know, finish off several other runs. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it all in 2021 or 2022, but when they are done, I will show them in videos and talk about them the way I talked about one of my favorite comic book series of all time, the X-Men. Hope you'll tune in when that comes out. Thank you very much, and take care.